Hey everybody, I know it hasn't been too long since my last post, but I kind of waited too long on posting the honeymoon videos, um, and I've already started my flight school. So yeah, I made it. If you've been following along thus far, getting the flight school paid for was probably the biggest challenge so far. I had to take out student loans, do the financial aid thing through FAFSA, and that covered pretty much the classroom portion of the degree that I'm trying to attain. And then I had to take out an additional private loan to cover the costs of the actual flight courses, the flight school part. Nice thing about it is I've had two flight lessons thus far, and I just go in and fly, and then sign an invoice afterwards, and it's already paid for through the school. Through Liberty, that is. So that's been kind of nice so far. But in addition to flight costs and the stuff that the loans are picking up, I still have to pay out of pocket for a couple of other things. But it's kind of cool because with any big endeavor in life, you wind up with some gear. So stuff is always fun. I have my knee board, which straps right to my knee with this Velcro strap. You just wrap it around your leg, your upper thigh, and it sits on your lap, so you can make markings and take notes. Usually, uh, you use your knee board to mark down your ATIS, which is the weather frequency on the radio. You log it, dial into ATIS, and it tells you what the weather is doing. And you have to make sure that every time you get ready to fly, you know what your weather is going to be, so you know what kind of conditions you're going to be flying in. On my knee board, I have a diagram of the airport that I fly in, and that's been a pretty useful tool to have. So I have that. I have my pilot log, which I actually bought before my honeymoon, and I'm already working my way up. Look, check this out. I got all kinds of entries in there already. I've only been at this like a week or two, so this is pretty exciting. I have my E6B calculator, or flight computer rather, shiny metal one. I don't know what it even does yet, to be honest. I'm sure it'll all become clear at some point, but for right now, I don't even know what this thing does. So that's a later uh, thing, I guess. I have my 2019 FAR AIM, which apparently is mostly just like publications and the first big section of it is the federal regulations. Just like so, you have a copy of the rules, and then the aeronautical information manual um, is just chock full of cool little tips and hints and good little knowledge. Um, so cool little stuff in there. Anyways, it's neat. Um, don't think I'm gonna read through that in one sitting. Though, the thing's the size of a Bible. And my favorite thing, um, I went ahead and did a little bit of research on headsets, and I actually looked here on YouTube at different people's Kitty. I looked through different people's videos about headsets, and apparently everybody, what it all boils down to is that everybody wants the Bose A20 uh, headset, which is like the tip of the top, cream of the crop pilot headset. That's what everybody. That's the best headset you can get. That money can buy. That being said, the money that buys it is considerable. It's like over $1,000. I think the cheapest I saw was like 1050. Average price, like the regular retail price, is like $1,200 or something like that, something stupid. Um, it's because they have active noise canceling, so you can turn noise canceling on and off. You can plug your MP3 player in it. Like it's got all kinds of bells and whistles. Really nice headset, apparently. It'll be a while before I know. I don't have that kind of cash. So, um, and then they had some lesser quality active noise canceling headphones. So cheap, but um, it's like a cheap sports car. In terms of headphones, it's fancy but cheap. And then they had the regular headsets, which you can go anywhere from the cheap ones that they sell at the flight schools to some really nice and expensive ones. They range from like about $100 to like $800. So I got an average medium. I found that David Clark has some really nice durable headset. So I got the H1013s, and they've been pretty good so far. I've used them twice. I've had 2 lessons by now, and I can hear everything. I can hear my instructor. That's the most important thing for me, is that I can hear my instructor clear as a bell. He can hear me pretty well. They're very, very comfortable. This top pad right here makes it so I don't really feel it at all on the top of my head. And these suction cups really do suction right to my face. It's been really nice. See, I can barely even hear myself talk right now. But you kind of have to have this thing like right up on your lips almost, which is counter to everything I know about microphones. But whatever, what can you do? But yeah, they've been great, and it gets me really excited. So it just helps with the motivation factor. In terms of the actual lessons themselves, what I've learned so far, I've been taking some the King School's Cessna flight training course through the internet, just online, and like the ground course basically, and full of information there. I already went completely through phase 1, and I'm starting on phase 2 now with it. But the thing that I'm finding is that you can watch videos and read all day long, but when you don't have controls reacting and with resistance there's no replacement for the real thing. There just isn't. I learned about coordinated turns and how to, if you're making a left turn, more than 30 degrees, it's like a 45-degree left turn. You use left rudder into the turn, bank left with the yoke, till you get your desired angle, a little back pressure on the yoke to keep the nose up and to keep the turn level. And then once you get to your 45 degrees, you may need to adjust your rudders in the opposite direction to hold it. And so it goes through like step by step. Hey, this, do this, do that, do this, do that, do this, do that. And when you're actually behind the yoke, there's no way to anticipate it. Like you gotta feel it, and it's pretty interesting. So that's one of the, not problems I've been facing, but one of the things I'm having to get used to. It's an adjustment for sure. Being able to learn the ground school stuff in such a way that I can apply it readily in the air. I've gone through My first flight lesson, we just kind of got up there and kind of got used to everything. Went through checklists. I'm getting really good at pre-flight my pre-flight checklist, checking all five of the fuel sumps on each wing and the three underneath the engine, checking the flaps to make sure that they're uh, you know sturdy, not loose, that the things are in their tracks, that um, what do you call it, the little there's a rod that actually can, the actuator rod, there it is, and make sure it's loose and free, make sure it's not tight and not moving, making sure all of the flight control services are free movement and that they're working properly. For example, like the ailerons, when you have to check the ailerons on the wings on your pre-flight, you want to check to make sure that when you move one side up and down, the opposite side is moving in the opposite direction, and that they're both moving freely, and that the actuators, good, and that the hinges, the pins are fully seated in their hinges, and that there's no breakages or splits or anything like that. Kind of a neat thing today, actually, when we got back. It's unfortunate. One of the guys who had his airplane parked in the same parking lot as our student planes had some damage done to his rear elevator, and you hate to see that, and he has reason to believe it might be vandalism, which is even worse. It just takes, if you hate somebody, like, punch him in the face. Like, why you got to do that to his airplane? The airplane didn't do nothing. So, I guess I'm just an airplane lover, but it was neat to see exactly what they're talking about when they say, damages to control surfaces and things like that. So everything is a learning tool. That brings us to, checking the elevators, checking the rudders, checking the trim tabs without actually moving them or touching them, really. Making sure everything's the way it's supposed to be. Checking the static ports, checking the engine oil, checking the fuel levels, checking the tires, checking the everything. Been getting pretty good with that. Been getting pretty good with going through my startup procedures, making sure the ignition is in the off position starting off, but then, you put the master switch, start with the, put a quarter inch in on the throttle. When you start the engine, mixture full rich, immediately check the throttle, make sure you're not over 1,000 RPM or too far under. So I've been practicing and going through all those things, which is pretty neat. And I think I'm getting pretty good at it. I really need to get the checklist and just like kind of go over them a lot more at home. That way, when I'm on the flight line, I'll be able to just run through it. And apparently, my instructors have been saying that it's more of a done list than a do list. So it's one of those things where you do it and then you check back at your checklist to make sure that you didn't skip anything. That being said, I've heard differing philosophies on that. So, but some things you kind of have to do quickly, knowing what the next thing on the list is. Like, for example, they have you run up when you're doing you're checking your magnetos. You need to run the RPMs up to 1800 RPMs. Check your left magneto. You switch from both magnetos to your left magneto. Make sure you see the RPMs fall about 50 to 100 RPMs. You put it back to both, they go back up, and then you do the other magneto, check for the same thing, put it back. Then you immediately want to go back to 1,000 RPMs because you don't want it to be having it at a higher RPMs for a long period of time when you're on the ground, because it's just not good for the engine. So I'm checking that kind of stuff out. in terms of actual flying, which is always fun. Today we did a lot. I had a double lesson because I'm trying to cram every little bit of fly time as I can into every week, especially if the weather's bad, then I'm screwed. So I need to keep up with my lessons. So I'm trying to, before work, after work, on the weekends, especially the weekends, I have to maximize my time. So I'm really, really trying to keep myself in the air as much as possible. And but so today we went out and into this little. The nice thing about Louisiana, you have plenty of like just wetlands and swamp area where there's no there's no air traffic. There's definitely no ground traffic. Maybe a boat or two, going fishing, but there's just nothing around there. And we did some stalls. We did some steep turns. My instructor showed me 60-degree turns. I don't think I ever got to do the 60s, but I did a couple of 30-degree turns. 30-degree bank 90-degree turns, and then I did some 45-degree bank 180-degree turns, which were fun. And then I did several, let's see, I did 6 touch and goes altogether, and landed twice, full stop landing. And with the help of my instructor, we did a lot of work today on the ground pattern. I learned, he gave me an acronym. He's military, so he gave me an acronym. GUMPFS, GUMPFS. It's gas, make sure it's on both tanks. Undercarriage, which the Cessna 172 has fixed landing gear, but if I was in a airplane with retractable landing gear, you make sure that it's down. Mixture set as required, so if you don't need full rich, you set it to where it's going to be the maximum efficiency. Propeller, Cessna 172 has a fixed propeller, so I don't need to worry about that one. But make sure it's if I'm ever in an airplane with a variable propeller pitch, I need to make sure that it's set to the right setting. F is flaps. So we did a touch and go with 0 degrees flaps, a touch and go with 10 degrees flaps, touch and go with 30 degrees flaps, and the different wind air speeds that you're trying to maintain with each one of them. So with 0%, you can do it at 85. No, that can't be right. 65, 70, 75, yeah, 80. So about 80 knots airspeed with 0 degrees flaps. 10 degrees flaps, I think it's 75. Try to maintain 75 knots. 20 degrees flaps, you try to maintain 70, and then with 30 degrees flaps, you can go as slow as 65 knots airspeed on your approach, on your final approach to landing. So we practiced doing some landing patterns around a couple of different airstrips, and actually, making the approach and landing. So that was neat. Did a little bit of communications, to talk to ground and tower to get clearance for everything. And so I'd learned a lot in the last 2 lessons. My first instructor the other day was Blake Weedig. I think I'm saying that right. Weedig, I don't know. But he was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot. We did a lot of groundwork, learning my V speeds and what speeds those are at and everything. Pretty much all the arcs on the airspeed circle, and just learned a lot of cool stuff. And then went a little bit flying, just kind of putted around a little bit, did some turns, did some um, ascents and descents, and learned about pitch, power, and setting your trim. And one of the things that I'm having to rewire my brain on is the idea of setting your trim, or not the trim, setting your pitch to gain or lose airspeed, and the importance of it. When you're coming in, when you're on your approach, and you're trying to um, descend. You wind up with a little bit of nose down to keep your airspeed up, but you don't want to. The natural tendency when you're pointed down is to correct and pull up. So I'm having to fight that in myself, but it's getting there. I think I'm making it work. Um, so, anyways, we did a lot of work with that with Blake, and then today I spent a good chunk of time with my instructor Joel Kent, who is a Navy pilot. He flies C-130, so he's pretty qualified for sure. But we did all kinds of stuff. We did some stalls, we did the banks, the steep turns. He's the one that showed me all kinds of stuff about landing. So we just did a lot of work today. It was a big lesson. We were out there for like 5 hours or something like that. So did a lot of work on that, which was neat and fun, and it's good to see. So trucking right along. Hopefully, my next video I'll have some more neat things to talk about. I'll tell you the biggest thing about it is just there's so much. It's hard to keep track of what I've learned to even be able to study it and retain it for next week. So I'm trying to keep up as best I can. Keep my right hand fast, but it's exciting nonetheless. So I'm really excited about it, happy, and looking forward to my next lesson. So, anyways, until then, this is Sky Sydney signing off.